We have a really fascinating set of sources today that gets uh, right to the heart of something you probably interact with constantly.
Yeah, and probably without even questioning it, honestly.
Exactly. We're looking at a stack of notes that summarize two presentations from a recent local Homelab meetup. And, the overarching theme here is information asymmetry.
Right.
Think about your car's dashboard for a second. You look at it, you see the fuel gauge pointing to E, and you immediately start scanning for a gas station. Right.
Oh, yeah. Pure panic mode.
Right. But it's this closed ecosystem. It's this black box on wheels where you're allowed to see the final output, but the raw data driving those gauges, that's strictly locked away.
Yeah. Manufacturers have essentially built a wall between you and the operational reality of the machine you own.
Hmm.
I mean, the vehicle's internal computer has this massive wealth of telemetry, but
Yeah.
they heavily curate what you actually get to see. So you might have the data generating locally right there in your driveway, but you are the one paying at the pump without the full picture of, how to optimize the spending.
Which is incredibly frustrating. So the mission for this deep dive is to decode how everyday people are ripping the lid off these black box technologies.
Yes, taking the power back.
Exactly. So whether you're prepping for a tech strategy meeting or, you're just fed up with overpaying for gas, we're going to explore how extracting your own data lets you build incredibly useful money-saving tools.
It really changes how you look at the hardware you already own.
It totally does. We want to get you to that satisfying aha moment by breaking down the mechanisms of how this actually works under the hood without all the jargon. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the first meetup talk, which tackled a DIY fuel gauge.
Right. So the presenter here, he didn't want to rely on that vague plastic needle on the dash anymore.
I mean, who does? It's basically just guessing.
Yeah, exactly. So he wanted to pull the raw fuel data directly from the car's brain via the OBD2 port.
That's onboard diagnostics too, right?
Correct. For anyone familiar with vehicle diagnostics, this is that standard trapezoid plug, usually under the steering wheel, that mechanics use to read error codes.
Oh, right, when the check engine light comes on.
Yep, that's the one. And it's been mandated in cars for about 30 years now, initially just to give regulators a universal way to verify a vehicle wasn't violating emissions standards.
Okay, so that legally mandated standardization, I mean, that sounds like a total dream for an open source project.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
But looking at the notes, it highlights a massive roadblock right out of the gate. The creator wanted to build a custom dashboard for his two specific vehicles. And technically, the OBD2 standard does include a parameter ID or BID for a fuel level.
Right.
But his cars just simply didn't implement it.
Yeah, it's incredibly common. Once you look past the legally required emissions basics, OBD2 turns into a total free-for-all. I mean, it's a wild west down there.
Wow, really? So they just ignore the standard?
Pretty much. Manufacturers aren't forced to support every single PID. They frequently ignore the standard parameters and route that telemetry through their own proprietary manufacturer-specific codes.
Ah, so they lock it down.
Exactly. To read them, you usually need a $1,000 diagnostic tablet, not, some cheap consumer scanner. So the car essentially refuses to hand over the fuel level through the standard open channels.
And I feel like this is where most weekend projects just die.
Yeah.
The door is locked, you give up.
Right. Normally, you just pack up your tools.
But the workaround this presenter came up with is just brilliant. He realized the manufacturer could hide the fuel data, but because of those strict environmental laws we talked about, they absolutely could not hide the mass airflow sensor data.
Yes. The mass airflow, or MAF sensor, it's strictly mandated for emissions compliance. All it does is measure the precise volume and density of the ambient air flowing into the engine's intake manifold.
Right.
And every single car must broadcast that specific data point on the standard OBD2 port.
Wait, so instead of looking inside a barrel to see how much water is left, he's measuring the exact amount of air whistling in through a hole to replace it. Is it really that accurate to rely on air to measure a liquid?
It sounds crazy, but yes. What's fascinating here is the underlying physics that makes this possible, specifically stoichiometry.
Stoichiometry, high school chemistry flashback right there.
Right. But it's key. Internal combustion engines require a perfectly balanced mixture of air and fuel to achieve an efficient burn. If they don't, They dump unburned hydrocarbons out the tailpipe, which fails emissions.
Okay, that makes sense.
So for a standard gasoline engine, that stoichiometric ratio is heavily guarded by the engine control unit at exactly 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel.
Okay, so the engine computer is constantly tweaking the fuel injectors to maintain that exact 14.7 ratio, right? Like,
Whoa.
no matter if you're idling in traffic or flooring it on a highway on-ramp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The oxygen sensors in the exhaust continuously verify the burn, and the computer adjusts the fuel flow in milliseconds to keep that ratio perfectly stable.
Wow.
Because that ratio is a physical constant for the engine to run cleanly, knowing the exact mass of air entering the system means you simply divide that air mass by 14.7. The result is the precise micro-drop volume of fuel that was just injected into the cylinders.
That completely flips the problem on its head.
It really does.
So if you know your total tank capacity, let's say it's 50 liters, you just subtract the fuel burned based on that air intake. He bypassed the proprietary software lock entirely by just relying on the fundamental chemistry of combustion.
Yep, total fuel volume in minus the exact volume of fuel calculated as burned out. It yields a highly accurate real-time tank percentage built entirely on open, legally mandated data.
Here's where it gets really interesting because, understanding the chemistry is one thing, but a car is a disconnected, fast-moving object, right? Getting a continuous stream of airflow data out of a moving vehicle and into a usable dashboard has to require a very specific architecture.
Yeah, and the hardware execution here is remarkably lean. The creator used a common ELM327 Bluetooth dongle.
I've seen those.
Yeah, they cost maybe $5 online. You just plug it directly into the OBD2 port. This dongle translates the car's internal serial network protocol into something a regular computer can read.
Okay.
But the dongle itself doesn't have the logic to do the math. For that, he paired it with an ESP32 microcontroller.
Right. The ESP32, that's basically a tiny, incredibly cheap computer chip with built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capabilities, right?
Exactly. So the ELM327 physically interfaces with the car, and the ESP32 connects to that dongle over a local Bluetooth connection right there inside the cabin.
So it's all happening locally while you drive.
Yep. The ESP32 acts as the active interrogator. Every 30 seconds, it sends an AT command over Bluetooth to the dongle, requesting the specific hex code for the MAF sensor reading. The car replies, the dongle translates, and the ESP32 receives the current airflow value.
Okay, but the car is driving down the interstate. It doesn't have a reliable internet connection to push that data anywhere.
Right, so the ESP32 is acting as a store and forward mechanism. Because it can't reach the internet, it takes that airflow reading and appends it to a basic text file stored locally on its internal flash memory. It just quietly stockpiles these data points as you drive.
It's like the car is taking field notes while you drive, stuffing them in its pockets, and the second it spots your home Wi-Fi, it runs into the house to deliver the report.
That is a perfect way to describe it. Then we hit step 2, the network push. When you pull into your driveway and turn the ignition off, the ESP32 is still powered for a few moments. It detects your home Wi-Fi network, establishes a connection, and suddenly unloads the entire trip's data payload to the cloud.
Okay, wait, the cloud. That brings us to step 3. Why push it to the cloud? The notes mention Cloudflare D1, which is a lightweight serverless SQL database running on the edge. But why not just have the ESP32 do the math before sending it?
It's a fair question, but the architectural choice here is where the efficiency really shines. Instead of trying to force that tiny ESP32 to calculate floating point chemistry math, which can eat up its limited memory and processing cycles, it pushes the raw data up. Doing the calculation in the cloud decouples the logic from the hardware.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, think about it. If you realize your tank capacity was slightly off, or you want to adjust the calculation to account for a different fuel mixture in the winter, you don't have to take a laptop out to your freezing car to flash new firmware onto the ESP32.
Ugh, yeah, that would be a nightmare.
Right. You just update a script in the cloud. When the raw air data hits the D1 database, a serverless background worker wakes up, processes the 14.7 ratio division, updates the total fuel burned, and saves the new overall tank percentage.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense for long-term maintenance. And then step 4 is just getting that process number in front of human eyes. The notes say the creator uses Home Assistant, that popular open-source smart home platform, to pull that final percentage from Cloudflare and display it on his phone.
The automation is entirely seamless. The moment you park, the hardware syncs, the cloud processes, and your dashboard updates. You get a perfectly accurate reading of your tank without ever relying on the manufacturer's proprietary gauges.
Which is an impressive technical flex all on its own. But the meetup notes emphasize that raw data is really only half the battle here. Home Assistant doesn't just display a static number. It runs the data through what the creator calls the nudge system.
Yeah, because dashboard dials are passive, right? You just look at them.
Yeah.
The nudge system makes the data actionable. Home Assistant takes that live, calculated fuel tank level and cross-references it with a live fuel pricing API.
Oh, wow.
It pulls real-time JSON data containing the regular unleaded prices for all the gas stations within a specific radius of the user's home.
So it's layering internal vehicle telemetry with external market data.
Huh.
Home Assistant compares the current local gas prices against a rolling 7-day average, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So if the current price is significantly below the average and the tank is below a certain threshold, it fires a push notification to the driver's phone.
Exactly. And the notifications are highly tailored based on that matrix of tank volume and market price. So it might say, fill up right now, fuel is at a localized low.
Okay.
But if you're sitting at, say, 79% capacity, the system might suggest only stopping if a specific station is directly on your route.
Right, because it's not urgent.
Exactly. The most valuable nudge, though, is the deterrent. It'll say something like, you are down to 20%, but local prices just spiked 15 cents. You have exactly enough fuel to wait out the spike. Hold off.
So what does this all mean for the wallet? I mean, building this is an amazing exercise in systems integration, but did all this high school chemistry actually save him any money?
The financial impact is actually immediate and trackable. The presentation detailed this one scenario where the creator was running errands and noticed his fuel was getting low. He checked his Home Assistant dashboard. The nudge system informed him that local fuel prices were peaking that afternoon. Relying on his high-fidelity stoichiometric calculation, he knew with absolute certainty he had enough fuel to safely complete his errands and get home without risking running dry.
You didn't have to panic buy gas.
Exactly. He bypassed the pump. And just 7.5 hours later, the local pricing APIs detected a market shift. The exact same fuel dropped by roughly $1 a liter.
$1 a liter, oh my gosh. If we're looking at a standard 50-liter tank, filling up from near empty means he kept $50 in his pocket over the course of a single afternoon, purely because he had the exact data to time the market.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the return on investment here is incredible. The notes indicate this specific avoidance of price spikes has happened 3 times in just a few months.
That's huge.
The ELM 327 dongle and the ESP32 combined cost about $10. By outsmarting the closed system, the hardware paid for itself tenfold in the first month.
It shifts your car from being a passive consumer of fuel into an active negotiator. It tells you exactly when to transact and when to hold.
It really does.
But, to truly own this entire ecosystem, we have to look at the dashboard itself. Because right now we're trusting Home Assistant to service this data on our phones. If we don't understand how a web server actually delivers that information to the screen, we haven't really escaped a black box, have we?
Yeah.
We've just traded the car manufacturer's closed system for another layer of software magic.
That is a great point, and that philosophical leap is exactly what made the second talk at the Homelab meetup so vital.
Right.
The presenter there wanted to demystify the web server itself, and not by, configuring popular software like Nginx or Apache, but by stripping the concept of a website down to its absolute bare metal network protocols.
Well, the presenter started the demonstration in a basic command line interface, right? Just
Right.
a terminal window. And he introduced a foundational utility called cat. And simply put, cat just takes a local file and prints its contents directly to your screen. It is an entirely local, isolated action.
Right. You have a text file named index.html. You type the cat command to read it, and the terminal just spits the text out right there. But to turn that isolated action into a networked service, the presenter introduced a pipe.
A pipe.
Yeah, a pipe literally takes the output of one command and shoves it directly into the input of another. In this case, the destination was a tool called netcat.
Okay, so using cat is just reading a file out loud to yourself in an empty room. How on earth does piping it to netcat make it become a website?
Well, netcat is a utility that takes arbitrary data and fires it across a network connection using plain TCP, the underlying transmission control protocol of the internet.
Okay.
So we've moved from reading a file on a local screen to shoving that text file down a network tube to another machine entirely.
Right, but TCP is just the shipping lane, isn't it? It guarantees the bytes arrive in order, but it doesn't tell the receiving computer what those bytes actually mean.
Exactly. If you point a standard web browser, like Chrome or Firefox, at a plain TCP stream of HTML text, the browser will likely fail or just display a messy wall of unformatted code.
Yikes, okay.
For the browser to actually render a dashboard, that plain text must be formatted as HTTP Hypertext Transfer Protocol.
Ah, the HTTP magic moment.
Yeah.
This is where the presenter demonstrated that a web server isn't some impenetrable engine. It is simply a machine that answers a TCP request by following a rigid four-step formatting rule.
Yes, the first requirement is a status line. The server must send a string like HTTP 1.1200 OK. This informs the browser's parser that the request was received and the server is successfully responding.
Okay, and step 2 is declaring the payload.
Right, the content type header. You send content type.txtml. This is crucial because it tells the browser's rendering engine to interpret the upcoming bytes as a web page rather than trying to, download it as a zip file or display it as an image.
Makes sense. Now, step 3 is the one that really highlights how rudimentary this all is. It's literally just a single, empty, blank line.
Just a carriage return and line feed. That empty space is the universally agreed upon delimiter. It signals to the browser that the metadata headers have concluded and the actual body of the website is about to begin.
And finally, step 4, the payload itself. The actual HTML tags and data you want the user to see on their screen.
The presenter proved that you can string those 4 elements together, the status line, the content type, the blank line, and the HTML payload, and send it over Netcat using a single standard echo command in the terminal.
Wait, really? No complex server software required?
None at all. The browser receives that specific string of text, parses the headers, hits its blank line, and perfectly renders the web page.
So a web server is fundamentally just a process sitting on a computer, listening for a request on a port, and writing that specific 4-part text response back over a TCP connection.
Exactly. This raises an important question about how complex we assume the internet is, when underneath it's just plain text being passed back and forth. We interact with slick, high-performance dashboards daily, assuming there's a staggering level of complexity making them function.
Right, like there's some wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah. And while enterprise servers obviously manage massive concurrency and security, the atomic unit of the actual exchange of a web page is just plain text, formatted in a mutually agreed upon way.
That is wild. The whole internet is in one echo. It completely reframes how you look at the internet. I mean, whether you are querying a multi-million-dollar cloud architecture or a guy at a meetup typing an echo command into a terminal, the fundamental physics of the web remain identical.
They really do. And demystifying these layers provides an immense amount of agency. When you understand the underlying mechanics, whether it's the stoichiometric ratio governing an engine or the TCP handshake delivering a web page, you stop being a passive consumer restricted by the interfaces companies design for you.
You actually gain the ability to extract raw telemetry and build systems that prioritize your own interests.
Yes, exactly.
Breaking down the tech gives us power, and as the nudge system proved, it tangibly keeps money in our accounts. We went from a deep dive into bypassing automotive software with high school chemistry all the way to unmasking the web server down to its bare TCP bones.
The true value of information isn't just accumulating it, it's understanding the mechanism of action. When you cut through the noise and understand the building blocks, you can actually bend the technology to serve your specific needs.
We just saw how leveraging a mandated mass airflow sensor and a $5 Bluetooth dongle can completely outsmart a closed system to save real money at the pump. Which really leaves us with something to think about. What other black boxes in your life are quietly hoarding your data?
Oh, there's so many.
Right. Your smart home appliances, your phone, the smart meter attached to the side of your house. They're all generating massive amounts of telemetry about your daily habits, and they're just waiting for you to plug in, read the flow, and take back control. The next time you look at a simple gauge, you probably won't just trust it, you'll ask what else it knows.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to wrap things up there. Have a great day, everyone, and a full tank if you manage to time it right. You've been listening to The Deep Dive. Catch you next time.